They call me Captain Alex, and I've seen my share of storms. But this one, it wasn't natural. It was like a wall of metal swallowing everything I had. Waking up, everything hurt, everything was bruised. I needed to establish two things: where I was and whether I was still alive. This jungle wasn't on any map I'd ever seen. But what I found on the ground was stranger than the jungle itself. They weren't animal tracks. Vigilance is instinct, but you can't be vigilant against an enemy you haven't even begun to imagine. And in that moment, they appeared. I knew instantly this was a moment of destiny. And that destiny had a name: Layla. Her eyes were a declaration of war. Layla was no ordinary predator. She was the perfect blend of beauty and danger, of wit and raw instinct. I couldn't afford to take my eyes off her. They stripped me of my weapons, not just my gun, but my belief in human superiority. Under Layla's assessing gaze, I was just a useless stranger. Though she spoke a language I didn't understand, those eyes needed no translation. She wanted to know who I was. She wanted to know if I was a threat. I tried to explain I was just a casualty, a mistake. But that truth was too simple for what they believed. They had seen other skyships before me. They led me away, deeper into the shadow, toward the heart of their tribe. I felt like I was being pulled into an ancient ritual. And then I met their elder. His gaze carried centuries of history, a weight of ancient belief. I knew this was Elder Faun. He said I carried the scent of the world that was forgotten. He saw not Alex, but a threat from a distant past they were trying to flee. My prison was a simple wooden cage. I could escape easily, but I needed to understand the rules of the game before dragging Layla and this tribe into bigger trouble. I began to observe. This tribe was not savage. They had order, they had culture, but I noticed one thing. They were perpetually afraid of something coming. That fear had a name. I heard them whisper it, a cold, dreaded name that cut through all the other noise. Lycan, the wolf. And I knew that was my enemy too. Night fell, and that fear was no longer a whisper. It was a piercing howl, a terrifying reminder that I was not the only one stranded here. The enemy was closing in. I heard the snapping of branches and the hungry snarls. I felt their eyes, and I knew it was Varkos and his wolves. It happened too fast. A wolf broke cover trying to smash through the defenses. I had to do something, or everything I was observing would turn to blood and ash. The fauns fought bravely, but they were outmatched in strength and speed. The Lycans, they were engineered to kill. I saw Elder Faun shake his head in despair. I couldn't just sit and watch. It wasn't in my nature. My skill is problem solving, and this problem needed solving now, even from a cage. I saw Layla in peril. A larger wolf, maybe their leader, cornered her. If she fell, it was all over. I had no choice but to instruct. I shouted the first words in my own language since I arrived, hoping she would understand the urgency. She listened. She trusted a stranger's voice over her own instinct. Layla spun, dodged the wolf's swipe, and drove her dagger deep where I pointed. A killing blow. She listened. She trusted, if only for a second. That was all I needed to create a tiny spark of hope, a minimal exchange. Once her breath steadied, Layla approached me. She wanted to know why. To them, I was an invader, yet I had just saved them. The conflict was immense. I answered in a language every creature understands. My words were a proposition, an unspoken truce. I hate their enemy, and I have the skills to deal with them. The skirmish was over, and I had earned one thing, their attention. Elder Faun clearly agreed to consider it. I had earned a small foothold in this world. And then, the first sign of acceptance. A gift. Layla delivered it herself. It was a silent truce, and that was all I needed to begin. After that night, things changed. I was no longer strictly a prisoner. I became an object of observation, a dangerous toy that Layla decided to keep. I was allowed out under heavy supervision. I needed to understand them. If I wanted off this island, I had to become a part of it, even if temporarily. They lived simply. They worshipped nature with a zealous fervor. Every touch, every word was tied to the jungle. Their life was the total opposite of my civilization. But I wasn't there for cultural studies. I was there for the truth. I needed to know why they and the Lycans were mutated and who did it. I demanded to speak with Elder Faun. As the oldest, he must know the island's history, or at least the curse they believe in. Elder Faun was a history book bound by fear. He didn't speak of science. He spoke of the wolf's curse that rotted the souls of our brethren. Layla translating. They forsook the moon's light and embraced the shadow. They became hungry and mad. I knew instantly this wasn't a curse. It was the aftermath of a terrible experiment. I tried to explain it in scientific terms, but I only got a blank look from Layla. Even when I spoke the truth, they were skeptical. I was the outsider. And until I proved I was more than a story, I was trapped. My relationship with Layla remained a confrontation. She was my jailer, and she never let me forget it. She was fast, strong, and dangerously smart. I spotted a new trail at the camp's edge. Not fawn or lichen tracks. Military boots. Someone else had been here. Alex whispered. This isn't a curse, this is my people. Or at least people who use my technology. The threat wasn't just from the past. It was from the present. The people who made the Lycans were likely back. I knew I had to act fast. But before I could plan, the camp was breached again. This time they weren't scouting. They were devastating. I knew what I had to do. If I could save Layla again, I wouldn't just earn freedom. I'd earn an ally. And I desperately needed one. I plunged into the fray. With no gun, I relied on hand-to-hand combat. I moved faster, using the Lycan savagery against them to gain an advantage. My eyes searched for Layla. She was fighting a massive Lycan with everything she had. She needed me. She knew it now. Captain Alex spots a discarded spear and hurls it with incredible force, deliberately missing the Lycan, but hitting the ground next to it, diverting the Lycan's attack on Layla. She saw my throw. No more doubt, just pure, silent cooperation. We became a team, despite our origins. Varkos appeared. He was bigger, faster, and more malevolent than any other wolf. He was the commander, and he was heading straight for Elder Faun. I knew I couldn't beat Varkos barehanded. I needed a strategy. I needed to get Layla and Faun to safety. Alex shouting, "The facility! We need to get to the old base. Their source!" We hustled Elder Faun away through a secret passage. The Lycans were close behind, but we were out of the immediate melee. We paused in a brief silence. Elder Faun was gasping, realizing the truth. This outsider might be their only hope. Faun, weak. If you can destroy the shadow, you may leave in peace. That was all I needed. A bargain. I saved them from what created them, and they helped me escape this place. Layla gave me my first weapon, a finely crafted stone axe. She couldn't give me a gun, but she gave me the strength of her tribe. We had to go find answers, and the only place we could find them was where no one dared to go, the ruins of ancient civilization. I knew the immediate enemy, but I knew those modern women, the people of Project Chimera, or whatever they called it, were the real threat. They were hunting me. They likely sent people here after my crash. Those operatives never give up, especially those women from that organization. And then, I saw them, the women of the organization. That fighting style and those suits were unmistakable. They were modern hounds. Layla could sense the danger, even if she didn't understand the tech. They weren't looking for Lycans or Fauns. They were looking for me, and they didn't know I was allied with the very things they wanted eliminated. Now we had two enemies, the Lycans and the Lycans creators. The problem was, they both thought they were the ultimate predators. Layla looked at me, giving me a challenging half-smile. She knew this journey would be dangerous, and she loved it. We moved forward. Two strange beasts forced into an alliance. To find the truth, we had to go deep into where the darkness began. After evading the Lycans and the operatives, we moved deeper into the Forbidden Zone. This is where my civilization met Layla's wilderness. Layla led the way. She knew this jungle better than anyone, but even she felt the unnatural coldness and toxicity of this place. We found it, the old research facility, a hulking gray concrete structure swallowed by roots and vines. It looked like a festering wound in the forest. I found a piece of my equipment, a destroyed satellite tracker and comm unit. Someone from Commander Nira's people must have left it during the initial pursuit. This confirmed my worst fear. Project Chimera. These Lycans and Fauns weren't mythical beings. They were products of genetic engineering, humanity's fault. I knew I had to go inside. Layla was hesitant. She warned me this place was cursed, that it was the home of absolute shadow. Inside was another world, cold, damp, and smelling of rusted metal. A maze of abandoned laboratories and dark corridors. I had to use my training. I found the central lab. On an old monitor there was a face. Not Commander Nira, but another scientist, the Lycan's creator. I found the logs. The Fauns were the stable product, created for resource extraction. The Lycans were the failed subjects, uncontrollably mutated. They were victims of themselves. This truth hit Layla hard. She always believed in a curse. Now, she knew she was just a tool, an experiment from a world she detested. I reached out. I had seen enough pain. She needed an ally, not a scientist. She needed to know she was more than an experiment. Our dynamic shifted. It wasn't about suspicion anymore, but a deep connection forged by this terrible truth. We had a common goal. I found the source of the mutation, an old reaction chamber, still leaking an amber liquid. The Lycans were being poisoned. That's how they turned savage. And then, we heard it. Not the snarls of Lycans. It was the sound of boots, organized and modern. Commander Nira was coming. They had tracked us. I knew Commander Nira would never let anyone walk away with the organization's secrets. The confrontation was inevitable. They appeared, Commander Nira along with her 2 operatives. They walked with confidence, as if they owned the place. Everything grew colder and more dangerous. Nira, cold voice. Kaelen Vance, what a surprise. I thought you were dead. You always liked places as dirty as this. She knew my old name, Kaelen Vance, the name I buried. Commander Nira wasn't just an enemy. She was someone from a past I desperately wanted to forget. Alex's raspy voice. Project Chimera is over, Nira. You can't control this place anymore. Instantly, Anya and Zara moved. They swiftly flanked us. I knew this would be an asymmetrical fight. I could only deal with Nira. Layla had to handle the other operative. Zara was a direct threat. A close combat weapon trained to destroy anything wild. I had to trust Layla's instinct. Zara was a fighting machine, but Layla had the advantage of terrain and agility. She was natural perfection. She didn't need tech. I had to create a diversion. Anya was trying to neutralize me with a stun gun. Their technology was my main enemy, but I could turn the primitive things into counter weapons. I knew Anya's weakness was complacency. I had learned to improvise simple weapons against their tech. One perfect throw. Layla and I had them cornered, but my goal wasn't to kill them. My goal was to destroy the source of everything. Nira screaming, "Don't! You'll destroy everything! You'll destroy us!" This was the breaking point. I had no time left. I knew I had to smash that reactor. With Layla's perfect cover, I ended Project Chimera for good. It was done. Project Chimera was over. But I knew Commander Nira would never let us walk away. She had lost everything. We ran, running through the darkness, through the toxic jungle, carrying the terrible truth and a new enemy. We survived. We won the battle. But I knew the real war was just beginning. Commander Nira would never forget, and I would never let her capture Layla. After destroying the facility, we returned to Elder Faun. The truth about Project Chimera was a shock, but it was also a weapon. Now we could fight the Lycans with intelligence, not just with spears. I explained that the Lycans weren't cursed. They were poisoned. And now that the source of the poison was cut, they would become crazier and more aggressive. We had to strike first. The plan was to hit their old stronghold where they had historically fortified their power. We had to neutralize the Primal core, Varkos' center of command. Despite proving myself, some warriors still doubted me. They looked at me, a human, with questioning eyes, especially my close bond with Layla. My connection with Layla transcended mere cooperation. After all we'd seen, we were inseparable. She was my compass in this insane world. But we weren't fast enough. Varkos didn't wait. He sensed our absence, the failure of the facility, and he launched a massive retaliatory strike. The alarm sounded, not a bell, but an ancient war horn. That horn signaled to all the Fauns that the major battle had arrived. They arrived faster than ever. Dozens of Lycans, with burning eyes and uncontrolled rage. The Faun settlement had become a battleground. I had no modern weapons left, except for a few stun grenades I salvaged from the helicopter wreckage. They were my only assets. I used guerrilla tactics. Hit fast, retreat, neutralize, not kill. My strength was chaos. I needed the Lycans to lose focus. Layla was in the heart of the fight. She was a dancer of death. She used her bow and incredible parkour skills to deal with the beasts. And then Commander Nira appeared. She had tracked us here. She didn't care about the Lycans. She only cared about the secrets I'd taken. A three-way battle. Fauns versus Lycans, Lycans versus Nira, and me against everyone. Nira used a high-tech rifle to neutralize critical Faun targets. Layla spotted Nira. She knew Nira was more dangerous than the Lycans. She abandoned the current fight and charged straight toward Commander Nira. I knew I couldn't stop Layla. She was a force of rage. She had to face her true fear and her true enemy. It was the match she had been waiting for. It was a duel, unlike any I'd seen. Layla's hatred for Commander Nira's world turned into raw power, but Nira fought with cold calculation, technology versus primal instinct. Layla charged in with the speed of a storm. She attacked with the bottled-up hatred of her entire tribe. But Commander Nira was prepared. Her technology was a deceptive defense that Layla couldn't see. Layla was overmatched. That force field was a dirty trick, and Nira used it to catch her off guard. I had to intervene. Our bond was strong enough to break every rule. I knew Nira's style. She relied on tech. She hated getting dirty. I had to drag her into a primal fight where my stone axe mattered. Even with our counterattack, the Fauns were taking heavy losses. I saw a warrior fall, his eyes reflecting pure despair. It was Goru's. Layla saw the loss. It was too much for her to bear. She realized we were fighting on the wrong ground. This wasn't our battle space. I had seen enough. I realized Nira's strategy was to bleed us dry. I had to accept temporary defeat and save what was left of the tribe. We retreated into the deep jungle. This was the Faun's home turf. We would use the shadows, the slopes, and natural traps to slow our enemies. Varkos needed no tech for the pursuit. He only needed his nose. He and his pack still followed us like rabid ghosts. As we ran, I told Layla about the old comm station on the west coast. It was our only hope to call for extraction or at least establish our location. We reached a temporary safe haven, but I knew Nira was plotting her next move. She wouldn't give me time to breathe. Layla's soft voice. You will leave when we send the signal? That question was a punch to the gut. I came here to escape my past, but I found my future in Layla. I had to make the impossible choice. But there was no time for sentiment. We heard the sound of a chopper. It wasn't extraction. It was Commander Nira coming for the final showdown. This was my final chance to use my military expertise. I had to deal with Nira and the Lycan simultaneously. It was going to be the final battle. I looked at Layla one last time. No words were needed. Everything was said. She was everything I needed to protect. We had come too far to stop. I am Captain Alex, and this is my final stand. Nira's chopper and Varkos's growl made a deadly symphony. We had minutes. This was the time to use everything we learned. My tech and Layla's ingenuity. I had to ensure everything was ready. Layla coated the arrows and spears with the tribe's strongest toxin. This was a fight we couldn't retreat from. Before we moved, I needed to say it. I wasn't Kaelen Vance, the man who ran. I was Alex, the man who found a reason to fight. Alex, whisper. I'm not leaving you no matter what happens. It was time to move. We maneuvered the way only the wildest warriors knew how. Silent, blending with the shadow in the forest. Our target? The research facility. Although partially destroyed, it still held enough secrets to end this game. We hit the core. Nira was there. She was attempting to salvage the remaining data, trying to rebuild her fallen kingdom. She didn't know we were right behind her. It was time. Layla launched the surprise attack. The speed and fury of the Fauns against the tech and discipline of Anya and Zara. We caught them off guard. That was all I needed. I knew this was my chance. I had to separate Nira from her guards. I aimed straight for her power source, the central console. The plan worked. I isolated Nira. But at the same time, Varkos and his Lycan army found us. We were trapped between two enemies. The great battle commenced. Lycans and Fauns slammed into each other in a fierce, uncompromising fight. Varkos's roar drowned out every other sound. I had to face Nira. She was the tactical threat. Layla knew her enemy was Varkos, the destroyer of her tribe. It was the battle we both had to carry. Layla was fearless. She fought Varkos with pure rage, using her speed to evade his brute force. She was the embodiment of the tribe's survival. I knew that to win, I had to be one step ahead of Nira. Everything had to be destroyed. No more data, no more plans, nothing for her to rebuild. I found it, the destruct switch. It would activate the self-destruct mechanism for the entire facility, swallowing the Lycans, Nira, and us too. I knew Nira was coming. She saw me and that button. There was no fear in her eyes, only absolute rage at being thwarted. I did it. I activated it. There was no other way. 15 minutes? That was all the time we had before everything here turned to dust. The siren tore through the air. Nira wasn't stupid. She knew 15 minutes was enough for her to retreat. She gave me one last hateful look and vanished. Layla felt the tremor. She knew what I had done, but she remained focused. Varkos was still the priority, and he was becoming more rabid as the self-destruct stirred up the toxins. I dashed in. My personal fight with Nira was over, but Layla's fight for survival wasn't. It was time for me to use everything I had to defeat Varkos. He was too strong. One swipe from Varkos sent me flying into a steel wall. I could feel my ribs crack. His strength was my despair. Intelligence. That was the only thing I had over him. I had to turn this ruined room into a trap. I spotted an old steam pipe. Layla understood my intent. She knew he would be disoriented for a fraction of a second. She aimed for the only weakness I had discovered in the Lycans. I burst out of the steam. All my remaining strength went into the axe. Not to kill, but to destroy. My axe aimed for what Varkos was trying to protect. Something I had never seen happened. Varkos's body began to dissolve. The toxins and the facility's self-destruct mechanism had neutralized all modified organisms. He couldn't survive. No more Lycans, no more Varkos. But the facility was collapsing. We had to go, now. I saw lights. It was Commander Nira. She had returned, trying to salvage anything left. She couldn't accept this total defeat. I used my last trick, a bit of science against her. She couldn't do anything when her own systems were fooled. We got out. We looked back. The research facility, the source of all the pain on this island, exploded and collapsed. It was over. We returned. The settlement was ravaged, but they had survived. The sacrifice of Gorus and the others wasn't in vain. The Faun tribe survived. I realized it. The moment I destroyed the distress beacon, I accepted the truth. I couldn't go back to my world. I had changed too much. This island was no longer a prison. It was my home. Layla was my home. I wasn't Captain Alex, the man of steel and technology. I was Kaelen Vance, the companion of the Fauns. The tribe began to rebuild. From the ashes and the grief, they were stronger. They no longer feared the Lycans. And they had me, a new protector, to deal with any remaining technological threats. There was still one threat. One surviving operative of Nira was watching us from afar, Zara. I knew she wouldn't give up. But we were vigilant. We had learned to read the forest. Layla was the first to sense her. Her wild instinct saved us both. We confronted Zara in the woods. She had lost all her technological coolness. She fought with desperation. But the two of us, with an unbreakable bond, neutralized her quickly. I looked at the island one last time. The threat was neutralized. The Lycans were gone. Nira was defeated, and her last pawn captured. I had finally found the peace I was searching for. I placed my hand on Layla's shoulder. She leaned into me. The war was over. But our story, beneath the moonlight and the jungle, was just beginning. After the explosion, after the chaos, there was only absolute silence. It was the first dawn where I felt true hope. The sunlight cut through the jungle, warm and no longer stained with fear. We started cleaning up. The loss was great, but the spirit of the Fauns was unbroken. They tended the wounded, and for the first time I was treated as part of that healing process. The new calm had arrived. The surviving Lycans, now that the source of the poison was destroyed, began to stabilize. Layla proposed a solution. Reconciliation and reunification. Walking along the coast, I found it. A long-forgotten rescue vessel scattered among the wreckage of an old comm station. It was damaged, but possibly fixable. I began to work. Fixing the vessel was a struggle, but it was second nature to me. Every wire I soldered, I took one step closer to the old world. Nira's world. Layla said nothing, but I felt the question in her eyes. Every step I took in repairing the boat was a reminder that I could leave her and the tribe behind. I had to face the truth. I had to make the choice. My world, where I was safe from the Fauns, or this new world, where I found purpose and love with Layla. I finished the engine repair. The boat was ready. It rumbled like a temptation, a reminder of what I once was. It called Captain Alex back. Layla came to me silent. She knew it was time for my decision. She didn't pressure me. She was just herself, pure peace in the wild. I looked at her. Her golden eyes held the entire forest, the entire tribe, the whole future I had been searching for. It was a peace no city could ever offer. I touched the boat's control panel. I didn't need to leave to feel like a man. I needed to stay to be a better man. I tore up my old map, becoming the island's new protector, accepting the new life. Destroying the rescue beacon was the final step. But I couldn't stay. My world called. I had obligations, people I had to answer to. Painfully, I had to go back. I promised to return. It was a promise I wasn't sure I could keep. I took her gift, a small horn, as a memento. I turned back and saw her standing there. The boat slowly pulled away. I chose duty over love. That was the burden I would carry forever. Destroying the boat was a symbolic act, but I knew Commander Nira was still out there. She was a hound. She would never stop. I had to teach Layla what I knew. I was no longer the scientist or the operative. I was the new protector. I learned to respect this jungle and use primitive tools. My stone axe meant more than any gun. My bond with Layla evolved beyond cooperation. We saw each other's weakest sides. She taught me peace. I taught her defense. The tribe accepted me fully. Elder Faun officially gave me a new name, one in their language. I was Kaelen, the gatekeeper. But we didn't forget the threat. I salvaged an old radio, using it only for frequency scanning. One day I heard it. Commander Nira's faint signal. Nira was still sending a beacon. She was calling in reinforcements. I knew I could silence her for good. I had to find a way to neutralize her satellite uplink without leaving the island. We found a leftover power crystal from the destroyed facility. It was strong enough to create an electromagnetic pulse. That was our chance. We had to climb the island's highest peak. It was an arduous journey, but Layla led the way. She knew every path, every route. When we reached the top, we saw the entire island. It was breathtakingly beautiful, a world worth fighting for and protecting. I didn't regret my choice. We began setting up the device. I wired the crystal to a modified transmitter using materials Layla helped me find. This was the last time I'd use Kaelen Vance's skills. I activated it. A powerful electromagnetic pulse swept across the island. It harmlessly disabled all electronic signals. Nira's beacon was silenced forever. It was done. The island was erased from satellite maps and modern communication grids. It was a permanent mystery, guarded by an invisible barrier. We went back. We descended the mountain, no longer worrying about Lycans or operatives. I was entirely a faun in spirit. That night, the tribe held a festival to celebrate the return of peace. Every faun, including the former Lycans, celebrated. I had found my tribe. This is the end of the story. A former operative, a faun warrior, and an island that found eternal peace. Our story was just beginning.